Welcome to Dead and Roasted. What can I get you?
When I was a kid, I was always jealous of the kids who could just walk home from school. They didn't have to wait on their bus or on their parents. They'd be back home in a few minutes, enjoying a fruit roll-up, and could actually catch the cool after-school cartoons. Not me, though. My bus ride took an hour. That never changed, you see, because some folks still walk to and from work these days. And tonight I've got a story for you about one Swedish listener who took a walk home after a stormy night, only to realize he's not alone, and his companion is very tall and very quiet. That story and more in today's episode. These are Tales from the Break Room. Before we begin, I wanted to tell you that you can help EerieCast and Tales from the Break Room stay alive no matter what, and you can listen to exclusive stories narrated by me that you've never heard before. All you have to do is head over to eerie.fm and sign up to be a premium member. I've prepared dozens of hours of members-only horror just for you over there, like a brand new Unexplained Encounters After Hours story about a possibly haunted bag of dog bones. Every premium member is a supporter helping us thrive. Thank you to everyone who has signed up so far. You are incredible. And by the way, you look good enough for a promotion here at Dead and Roasted. That's EERIE.fm. There was something else on sonar. From Curtis TVA. Inland diving is the part of commercial diving that no one wants. The water in the lakes and the rivers I worked has zero visibility. You usually have to work by feel. The current will kill you if the sluice gates open wrong, and the cold will kill you on its own if your suit fails. I did inland work for 12 years out of East Tennessee, and I'm not going to do it again. I worked a lot of jobs for TVA, which is what Tennessee Valley Authority gets called by people who work for it. The dam jobs are bread and butter for inland divers in our part of the country. We do debris clearance on the intake trash racks, or inspection of the spillway gates and such. The water in most of those reservoirs has 6 inches of visibility at the surface and 10 feet down. You go in on a stage and get lowered to depth, and you work in pitch black with a comms umbilical to the tinder on the surface. My tinder for most of my career was a guy I'll call Roger for the sake of this story. Roger was good. He was clear on the comms and never panicked, and he kept track of you the whole dive. The third guy in our usual team was VJ. Yes, I know that sounds hilarious, but that's what we called him, VJ. VJ was older than both of us and had done the job since before saturation diving was a thing. VJ mostly tended in his later years, but he kept his commercial card current and would suit up if we got short. We were on a contract at one of the larger dams that I am not going to name for privacy reasons. The job was a debris clearance on an intake grate at about 90 feet. We'd been on the job for 2 days. It was straightforward work. You feel your way to the rebar of the grate and you find the bigger pieces of debris hung up on it. Usually around here that would be just logs, maybe some fish. Then you wrestle them loose. The current is shut off topside while you work, but you can still feel it pull at you when the sluice gates downstream do their thing. I was on the 3rd dive of the day. I'd been down maybe 12 minutes when Roger came over on comms.
Curtis, you got somebody else down there with you?
I didn't say anything just yet. I'd been getting my arm in behind a log to find where it had caught on the grate, and I had to back out before I could focus on what he had said. Say again, Roger?
Sonar showing 2 returns, you and somebody else. Bigger than a fish.
There's nobody down here, Roger. Just me and the grate.
If you say so, but I'm seeing something bigger than a carp and person-shaped. Hold up, I'll go get VJ.
I stopped moving. Inland diving teaches you to be still very fast if something's going wrong. The current wasn't running, and the water was a black pressure around the outside of my helmet, and that's it. So I waited to hear back from Roger.
Curtis, VJ's at the screen. He says it's a body.
What? I thought. I took a deep breath, then asked, Okay, what do you want me to do?
Just stay where you are. We're trying to figure out if it's a real return or a glitch in the unit.
So I stayed where I was again. The thing about pitch black water is that all you have are the thoughts in your head. I was at 90 feet of cold water in the dark with no actual stimulus other than the inside of my helmet and Roger's voice. That's when I felt something brush my left wrist. The wrist was outside my glove where the dry suit seal met the glove cuff. And I swear to you now, if you're reading or listening to this, that I felt fingers. I instantly began to yell. Roger, get me up! Get me up right now! A hand just touched my wrist. Roger did not hesitate. I'm grateful that he listened right away without a question.
All right, calm down. You're coming up. We got you. Hold on.
Then it grabbed me, and the hand was strong. This was not the grip, quote-unquote, of a corpse. It was a deliberate grip, with all 5 fingers, and the fingers were colder than the water. The grip held for about 4 seconds, then let go of me, and I felt nothing else, until the line started to pull me up. They had me on the surface in under a minute. Roger and VJ were both at the rail. Roger was talking on the radio to somebody else. VJ was standing a few steps back from the rail with one hand on the safety bar and looking at me. I rapidly took off my helmet. My arm was shaking. It freaking grabbed me. Roger, the sonar, VJ called to Roger. Still there. The return's still on the screen. You said the hand let you go? Yeah, it grabbed me and let me go. I stayed sitting down on the dock. I could not feel my legs. VJ stayed at the rail and watched the one screen with Roger. After a minute, VJ spoke up again. I'm gonna go down. Roger looked at him. VJ, no, that's not a good idea. I'll go down. Curtis is shook up, look at him. We can't leave it there, and we can't pull off this contract on day 3. I'll go down. VJ, suit me up. And so VJ went down. He was on the bottom for about half an hour. Roger talked to him on comms the whole time, and we both watched the screen. The second return, the human-shaped thing, didn't move. VJ's return moved around it, circled it twice, and stopped near it longer than I expected, then came back to the line. VJ came up calmly and slowly. When his helmet came off, he didn't say a word. Instead, he carefully removed his gear. When that was done, he walked over to the cooler and got a Coke and began to drink. VJ, what did you see? Nothing. Can't see a dang thing down there. You know what I mean. Did you feel anything? What happened? Yep, I felt something. I'm done. You're done? Roger looked surprised. Done with the day. Done with the contract for today. Just call the regional supervisor. So Roger did that. The regional came down in his truck and had a long conversation with VJ, but we didn't hear it. Afterwards, the crew packed up and we went home. The next morning, the second return was no longer on the sonar. VJ went down again. He was on the bottom for about 40 minutes and did the clearance himself. He came up, took the suit off, signed the log, and went home. The contract finished out without anything else happening. I worked with VJ for another 5 years. I eventually stopped asking him what he had felt on the bottom of that intake, because he never answered. We kept working jobs together, we ate lunch together when we could. VJ's daughter got married a couple of years later, and he had me at the wedding. He retired in 2017, and we stayed in touch by phone. I tried asking about it again in 2019, when I'd been off the bottle for about 8 months. We were on the phone, and I brought it up. Hey, you remember that, second return at the dam that one time? You know what I mean. What was that all about? Like, are you ever gonna tell me what happened?
Well, you know what you felt, Curtis?
Yeah, I remember what I felt. Doubt I'll ever forget it.
Well, the easy way to put it is that it was the same thing. Cold, cold, cold fingers on a hand. Just be thankful that it touched you and you didn't touch it.
VJ, what does that mean? He hung up. Dang it, I thought. I was clearly never going to get a real answer from him. And when he died in 2022, the answer would forever escape me, if there even was one. In 2018, I stopped doing inland work. Very thankful that I did. If I ever go swimming in the lake or in the ocean, though, and something skims past my leg, I freak out. But I have a good reason for that. Someone knocked on my truck cab at a rest area. From Petoskey Stone. I drove long haul for decades. It's something I sort of had to get into after a knee injury ended my construction career back in '94. I needed something that didn't beat up my back. I'd been a framing carpenter on commercial builds for 15 years before that, mostly hospitals and schools. The knee was a job site fall. A piece of subfloor gave out under me on a hospital expansion, and I went down 6 feet into rebar. A few surgeries later, the doctor told me I could go back to framing, or I could keep walking when I was 60. I picked what everyone else would probably pick, walking. So I got my CDL. I did short runs for a year, then moved up to long haul. I liked that solo aspect. My wife liked the money and didn't mind the time part. We'd been married for nearly a decade when I switched, and we didn't have kids yet, which made the schedule easier for us. She worked at a credit union in our town and had her routines, and she had her sister around to keep her company. I'd be gone 4 or 5 nights a week and home on weekends. She said it was like having a normal husband with extra weeks of vacation built in. Wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. But maybe it was good, because we stayed together for 33 years, though she passed in 2019, God bless her soul. The driving was good to us. There were a few jobs over the years that stayed with me forever. The one I think about a lot was a stop I made at a rest area, someplace in Michigan, about 12 years back. I was running a load of industrial bearings from Detroit up to a mining operation outside Marquette. It didn't need refrigeration and it wasn't time sensitive, which meant I could take it slow on the haul and not push too hard through the night. Plus, it was a route I was used to. It's a haul that goes up I-75 across the Mackinac Bridge, and then about 3 hours west on US 2 along Lake Michigan. The route has rest areas every 50 miles or so. I usually stopped once on a long haul to sleep 4 hours and eat. I had a favorite stop a little further up, near St. Ignace. They had a hot food vending machine that did decent burritos, and my mouth was watering. But that stop had been closed for renovation that month. So, disappointed, I had to push up onto the next one. That night, I pulled into a small rest area between Manistique and Escanaba, one of those places that only has a vending machine, some bathrooms, and some picnic tables. No cameras I could see, no attendants. Places like this, folks usually use during the day, and those folks are usually retirees on car trips, and at night, they're truckers like me. I think I'd pulled into it 3 or 4 times over the years, but it was rare. It was around 2 a.m. The lot had one other truck in it, an unmarked dry van, dark in color, and parked at the far end. That truck was running its engine on idle, which some guys do when they're sleeping inside and want the cab to be nice and warm. I didn't see any lights on inside, though. I figured the driver was sleeping. I pulled in 2 slots over so I could swing out easy in the morning. I sat in my cab eating a sandwich and a banana, watching the road through the windshield. Suddenly, I heard 3 quiet taps on my driver's side door, about 4 feet up. Quiet enough that I almost didn't hear them over the diesel engine's idling. My door is up high. To tap there, a person would have to be tall or standing on the step. I leaned over to the window and took a look outside. There was a guy on my truck step looking back at me. A white guy in his late 30s, dark hair, and he looked soaked. His shirt and pants were wet through, and his hair was matted to his head. He wasn't wearing a coat, though the temperature outside was in the 40s. His face was clean, no marks and no expression. He looked at me through the glass, and I didn't open the door. I didn't even move. He then took a step back, still looking at me, before walking off across the parking lot toward the trees on the far side. That was about 30 yards of grass between the asphalt and the tree line. He walked it slow, not looking back again. I lost sight of him in the trees. I tried to sleep after that, but couldn't. I kept the doors locked and the engine and headlights off, but I had the cab light on, and I stayed sitting up. Around 4 a.m., the idling engine on the other truck cut off. It was unexpected, and it got that loud quiet. You know, when the only sound around suddenly shuts off and you're left with that quiet ringing in your ears. It actually made me jump a little. I sat there in silence afterward and waited for the sun to come up. At dawn, I got out to use the bathroom, and that other truck was gone. Air brakes hiss when a truck pulls out, but I had never heard them hiss. I knew the engine had cut off 4 hours earlier, but I didn't know when the truck had left. Just before I entered the bathroom, I noticed something. On the bathroom door, taped at eye level, was a missing person flyer. The flyer was old, the paper was turning yellow, and the tape on it dried out and curled at the edges. Someone had put it up months ago and had not yet taken it down. I didn't usually care about flyers, but this one was right in my face when I went in. The person on the flyer was a white man in his late 30s with dark hair. He was at a wedding and smiling. There was a name on it. The flyer said he had last been seen at this rest area about 6 months ago. It asked for anyone with information to call a number at the bottom. It was the same guy, the same man who had tapped on my cab. I stood at the bathroom door for a minute looking at the flyer. Then I went in and used the bathroom. I came back out, and the flyer was still there. Of course it was. I looked at it again, just to be sure it was the same guy. No doubt about it. I drove on to Marquette and made my drop. I took my 4 hours and drove back south the same route. The rest area was empty when I went through it. The flyer was still on the bathroom door when I checked again. Honestly, I don't know what I was expecting. I told the guy at the yard who took the truck back from me about it. He simply told me what another driver had told him a year before. It was about the same rest area. Said that a man went to his window and tapped on the door before walking off into the trees. Said the guy reported it, but nothing came of it. I looked into the man's name from the flyer, even went back to get the number. I called the number and no one would pick up, so I left a voicemail. Having looked up the information, apparently the man was married with 2 daughters, and he was an engineer at one of the iron mines outside Marquette. His car had been found in the rest area the day after he was reported missing. His wallet had been left in the glove box and his phone on the driver's seat, and by that point no one knew what happened to him. It's just so bizarre, accidentally becoming part of a missing persons case, and to know that he's still alive, still out there, and yet he doesn't want to be found. But what does he want? Why does he go to truckers' windows when they're trying to sleep and tap on the doors? Is he still alive? Was he alive when I saw him at my window? Or was that something else? Phantom in the Container. From Scotty. I was 7 the first time I had something happen that made me a believer. My grandparents lived in an old farmhouse out in the country. I used to stay over there sometimes when my mom picked up extra shifts. They had a spare room upstairs where my grandma made a little nest of blankets for me on the floor, as the bed had busted springs. One night I woke up to a sound like marbles rolling around, glass on wood, slow, going one direction then coming back. The attic was right over that spare room, and nobody used it anymore since the ladder had cracked. I lay there with my eyes wide, listening to it roll in what felt like a circle. Then one hard knock on the floorboards right above my head, like somebody had brought their fist down really hard. I bolted out of there and into my grandparents' room. My grandpa got up with his flashlight and his old single shot, walking the hallway in his pajamas. He stood under the attic panel and listened. He came back and told me it was just squirrels. I could tell that wasn't the truth. In the morning, I asked my grandma about it, and even she acted suspicious. But she did say that her mother had heard things in that attic too, back when she was a girl, and that the house had always been a little funny. She said as long as you didn't go looking for it, it didn't bother you. Then she put another pancake on my plate and told me to eat up. I'm in my 40s now and drive a truck for a living. Mostly paper goods, toilet paper, paper towels, and those big industrial rolls. The trailer carries pallets of cases all strapped down. These are pretty light loads and easy hauls. Been doing it for a couple years now. This happened about a year ago. I had a delivery to a warehouse a few hours south. I'd left later than I wanted to since the loading dock was running behind. By the time I was on the highway out in the middle of nowhere, it was getting dark. I was somewhere out in the flatlands when I heard the first thump from the back. Just a single dull sound. Cargo shifts sometimes if it's not strapped in right, or if you hit a bad bump. So I let off the gas a little and kept going. A few minutes after that, it happened again. Only this time it sounded like something tumbled around. Maybe a case or two had come off the top of a pallet and was rolling about. I cussed, since a messy trailer means the warehouse guys give you a hard time on the unload. I dropped my speed down and tried to keep things smooth. But then I heard what I swore sounded like footsteps. It wasn't a thumping sound like cargo, but footsteps, walking slow from the front of the trailer toward the back. A few steps, then a pause, and a few more. The cab is insulated, but you can hear things in the trailer if they're loud enough. And this was loud enough. I told myself it had to be the suspension, or maybe I was tired. I told myself a whole list of things while I began to look for somewhere to pull off the road. The road climbed a low hill, and at the top there was one of those little rural water treatment plants, behind a big chain-link fence. There was nothing else around. The shoulder was wide enough that I could get the rig off the road, so I pulled over there and I killed the engine. I sat in the cab for just a moment, trying to force myself to get out. I then grabbed my flashlight from the door pocket and walked around. The metal was cooling off and I could hear it ticking. I undid the latches and swung one of the doors open, and I stood there, shining my light in. The first thing I saw was that I'd been right about the cargo. There were cases knocked over toward the back, and a bunch of wrapped rolls scattered across the floor. Not as bad as it could have been, but I didn't see an animal or a person and nothing moving around. I let out a breath. I was about to climb up and start fixing some of it when I felt a shift in the air. Something at the very front of the trailer started to move towards me, fast. The only way I knew it was there was because of the disturbances around it. As it moved, the paper goods around it began to ripple like a wave, starting from 60 feet back, rolls blowing outward against the walls and up into the air as it came through. A couple of cases got knocked sideways off the pallets as whatever it was passed. Then it went through me. I felt a forearm hit my chest, definitely a forearm, followed by a hand grabbing my shoulder for half a second and letting go. I got spun a half turn and almost dropped the flashlight. Behind me out on the asphalt, I heard footsteps moving away. 3 or 4 of them, heavy, sounded like boots, going off down the road in the direction I'd just come from. I stood there with my back to the open trailer, my flashlight pointing at the road, and absolutely nothing on the road to point it at. My shoulder was warm where the hand had been. My legs really didn't want to move at that moment. Eventually, I got the door shut. I climbed back into the cab and drove the rest of it too fast for the load I was hauling. My dispatch called once and I let it ring. When I pulled into the lot, the warehouse manager came out and saw the inside of that trailer. And of course, he got on me for 15 minutes about driving like a lunatic and messing up his unload schedule. I let him. There's not much I could have said to not get in trouble at that point. I called my mom that night from a motel and told her about the whole thing. She told me Grandma used to say spirits sometimes hitch rides, that they can get on at one place and get off at another. And when that happens, you just let them off. Don't ask any questions. I asked her if she believed that. She said she didn't know what she believed, but she believed my story. I still run that route sometimes. When I do, I keep the radio up, and anything I hear in the back is no longer my business. The Man with the Head, from Cherry Bulsum. I'll start by saying this isn't really my story. The horror here happened to someone else, someone who didn't make it home that night. But I was there, or near enough to there, and I'm the one who has to live with it, with what I heard and with what I saw. So I guess I get to tell my part. I'm 31. I work the front desk at an office building. I still work there. It's mostly insurance stuff and a couple of small firms that rent space. Think there's a tax office on the second floor, too. The building has maybe 40 employees total when everyone's in, which isn't always. We have a big lot out front and a smaller one in the back for staff. There are trees on one side, a road on the other, and a couple of empty commercial lots nearby. And I can say that this happened in Minnesota in the late 2010s. So my job is the most boring job in the world, answering phones and signing people in. But sometimes I do get to water the plants in the lobby, so that's nice. I bring a book to work most days and get through maybe 100 pages a shift. Some days the only person I talk to is the FedEx guy. Usually I leave at 5, but a few times a month I have to stay late for whatever reason. Some of the partners work late, and they like having someone at the desk in case a client needs to be buzzed in. On those nights, I'm the one who locks up and sets the alarm. Unless the cleaners are coming, then the cleaners do it. But they only come twice a week. On the night in question, they weren't coming. If I recall correctly, it was a Thursday. I'd been there since 7:30 in the morning, as one of the partners had an early thing. I was tired. My back was killing me from sitting all day. I just wanted to go home and put something stupid on TV. The last partner left around 8:45. I did my walk around, made sure the bathrooms were empty and the conference room lights were off, and I came back to my desk, grabbing my bag and my keys. Time to call it a day. I locked up the front, arming the system through the little keypad by the door. Then I walked out toward my car. The back lot has those tall lights on poles, 3 altogether, and they're all right, but they don't really get into the corners. My car was parked about halfway down. I was digging in my bag for my phone, since I always call my husband on the way home. That's when the screaming started. It came from past the edge of the lot, somewhere out in the dark where there's a strip of grass and then the road, then some empty commercial lots. It was coming from a man, I was sure of it. He was screaming like he was being killed, like his guts were being ripped out. The first one was loud and went on way too long. Then it broke into a second that was much higher pitched. But then he started to make another noise, a wet noise, like he was trying to scream through something filling up his throat. I gotta be honest, I didn't move. I stood there in the parking lot with my hand still in my bag, and I didn't move for what felt like a long time, but was maybe just 4 or 5 seconds. I'm not sure my brain was even working, but I kept hearing the man scream. I made a run for my car. I got to the driver's side and hit the unlock button on my fob, and nothing happened. I hit it again 3 times, 4 times. Nothing. I pulled at the handle anyway, but it didn't budge. That fob worked when I came to work that morning. It worked at lunch when I went and got a salad from the place down the road. It just sat there in my hand like it was now dead. and that is what it turned out to be. The screaming stopped while I was standing at my car door. It cut off with a last wet sound, then went completely quiet. In a panic, I started to head back toward the building. I wasn't running just yet. I think I was kind of half walking, half stumbling, because my legs felt weak. But that's when I heard someone talking. A man's voice as well, quiet, kind of sing-song, coming from out there past the lot. I couldn't make out the words, or they were words I couldn't understand anyway. It sounded like he was saying the same thing over and over. I turned to look. Involuntarily, my body just did it on its own. I shouldn't have looked. I wish I didn't. There's a low concrete divider at the edge of our lot, and past that, there's some grass and then the road. He was just on the other side of the road, standing there in the dark between two of the streetlights, where it's hard to see. But I could see his shape, and I could see he had something in each hand. One of those somethings was a knife, a big knife. I could see it glinting in the light when it moved. The other thing he was holding by hair. It took me a moment to realize what I was looking at. My brain kept trying to make it be something else, a bag or a mask, something somebody would actually carry normally. But it wasn't those things. He was holding another man's decapitated head. I couldn't make a sound. Even though my body wanted me to scream, I couldn't do it. It was like my throat closed up, and nothing would come out. I ran for the front door of the building, not the back. I went all the way around since the front door is the one I had the keys for. I got the key in on maybe the third try. My hands were trembling fiercely, and I had trouble punching in the alarm code. The keypad beeped at me twice for wrong entries before I finally got it. I shut the door behind me, locked it, and slid down the wall dialing 911 from the floor. The dispatcher was very calm with me, but I was not calm. I was telling her there was a man with a head outside, a head, and she kept telling me to slow down, to tell her where I was. The cops got there fast. I could see the lights through the front windows. They found him, pretty quickly too, although I couldn't tell much more than that night, and I wasn't told much. What I would learn later, mostly from the news, was that the victim was a man in his 50s who worked at one of the other businesses on that road. He had been walking to his car like I was that night. The man who did it wasn't even from here. They said in the news there was a religious component to it, that he believed he was supposed to do what he did, that he'd come into this country with that intention or had developed it after getting here. That part they weren't sure of. They didn't really explain more than that. I don't think anyone could really explain. I quit for about 6 weeks, but then I came back since I needed the money, and the partners were good to me about it. I only work days now. They got a security guy who comes in at 5 and stays until close, which they should have done all along. The back lot has more lights now too, and I got my key fob's battery replaced. Works without a hitch now. Still, I think about that night, how I was maybe 50 yards away from a man who had been decapitated by another man, and that could have been me. I thought it was a person. From Schmert, 49. I'm 34 years old. I live in Sweden in a smallish town not too far from Göteborg. My job is to work at a warehouse on the edge of town for a clothing distributor. For a long time, I didn't have a car. Cars cost a lot here, and gas costs a lot too. And insurance costs a lot. I lived close enough to the warehouse that walking made more sense for me. About a 40-minute walk if I wasn't distracted. 50 on a bad day. My shift started in the afternoon and ended late, sometimes 11 at night, sometimes later if we had a big order going out the door. So I'd walk in during daylight and walk home in the dark. I'd been doing these walks for maybe a year and a half. The walk goes through town for a bit, then there's a section, about 15 minutes of it, where the road cuts through woods. Real forest, so dense with underbrush you can't walk through it, unless you're crazy. The road is paved but narrow, and there are no streetlights along that stretch. During the day, it's one of the most scenic walks you could ask for. You can hear birds and smell the pine. Sometimes you see a hare cross in front of you. I used to look forward to that part on the way in. Walking home at night, I didn't really think about it. I would have headphones in, and I had my thoughts with me, so the dark didn't scare me and I really didn't notice it. Until this happened. This occurred in autumn. It was cold and the leaves were changing. There was a storm that evening, a pretty bad one, with rain coming sideways and wind that made you nervous about the roof. It started about an hour before my shift ended, and was still going pretty bad when we were done. A few of us stayed in the break room and waited it out. I had a coffee with an older guy named Mikhail, and for some time we talked about football. Sometime after midnight, the rain finally let up. Mikhail's wife came to pick him up, and I told one of the other guys I was just gonna walk it. He looked at me funny, but didn't say anything else. Really, I should have asked for a ride, but I didn't. Outside, the air was heavy and wet, and the road was shining. There was mist coming up off the ground in patches, and you could see it move through the lot lights. I put my hood up, and I started to walk, same as I always did. The town part of the walk was great. A few cars went past, streetlights were on, everything looked clean and washed. I felt pretty good, actually. I like that crisp look and feel after a storm has just gone, and everything is quiet again. Eventually, I got to the woods, and I noticed right away how much darker they were than a usual night. Cloud cover was still thick, and the moon was only getting through in little bits. The mist was heavier in there too, sitting low between the trees, drifting across the road. I could only see about 20 meters in front of me when the moonlight hit right, and that wasn't very often. I'd been on that stretch for maybe a couple of minutes when I noticed there was someone walking ahead of me. The road bent a little, and when the moon caught the bend, I saw the figure walking. They were tall. I'm 180 centimeters, around 65 kilos, on the thinner side. This person was taller than me, quite a bit, maybe 2 meters and thinner, which was a surprise to see someone that tall yet thinner than me. The shoulders were narrow, and the arms looked long. I could only see them from behind. I assumed they were wearing dark clothes, or maybe just dark from the wet. I couldn't really tell. My assumption was it was someone from town walking home just like me. Maybe someone had been at the bar a little too long, or finishing a late shift. Their pace was steady and calm, not in a hurry, so I kept my pace as well. I didn't want to catch up to them since it's awkward to walk right behind a stranger in the dark, but I didn't want to slow down either. It was cold, and I was ready to get home. For a while, it was just the two of us. Me and the person ahead, walking through that wooded stretch with the mist around us. I'd say it went on for another 15 minutes, give or take, which usually would have been the end of the stretch by now, but we were taking a much slower, careful pace. I remember thinking it was a little strange that this person ahead of me never looked back. People usually do look back or look around, especially when they hear someone behind them, even just a quick glance. This person did not. They just walked. Eventually, I started to feel uncomfortable, though I really couldn't say why. Their walk didn't seem right. I told myself I was just being paranoid, so I turned up my music and ignored it. The woods began to thin out. I could see the lights of town up ahead, the first streetlight after the bend, and the edges of buildings. We were almost out of the trees, and I felt relieved. I was thinking about getting home, getting out of my wet clothes, and what I was going to eat. The figure was still about 15 meters ahead of me. As we came into the dappled light at the edge of the woods, where the streetlight from town was just starting to reach, they finally turned. Their upper body twisted, the shoulders came around, and the head came around with it. They looked at me over their shoulder while still walking forward, I lost my breath in that very moment. I made some kind of sound, but it wasn't a scream, even though I wanted to. That wasn't a human face I was looking at, not a human head. What I saw was a long snout like an animal's, and the mouth was open a little, and I could see teeth inside it. The eyes were set back along the snout, and they caught the streetlight. They went bright for a moment, like a dog's eyes reflecting light. It looked at me for just a couple of seconds. Its head was still turning forward again, and the body was still walking forward, and the legs had not broken their stride. Eventually, it turned its head back the rest of the way and veered right off the road and into the trees, into that underbrush I said people wouldn't normally walk into because it's too thick. It did so effortlessly, in a calm, two-legged walk. The mist and darkness in the trees quickly swallowed it up, and I couldn't see it anymore. I stopped then, just stopped right there in the road. I was breathing really hard. I couldn't make my legs move anymore, and my hands felt numb. In my head, I was just arguing with myself about what I just saw. Was it real? Was it a person in a costume? Or did I just spot the most insane-looking animal of all time? At the same time, I was still trying to figure out if it was still in those trees right next to me, watching. The thought of it just off the road, only a few meters in the woods, looking back at me through the trunks. That was what finally got me moving. I ran, and I have not run like that since I was a kid. I sprinted past the spot where it had gone into the trees as fast as I could, eyes forward, panting like a madman. I kept on running until I was well into the town part of the road, lights all around me and even a few people. The remainder of the walk or run home I don't even remember. The next thing I knew, I was at my apartment, walking inside, more grateful than ever to be back home. I only ever told one person about this experience, specifically my brother, because I was trying to explain to him why I suddenly wanted a car. He's the practical type, and he thought it was a good idea anyway, monster on the wooded road or not. I had enough put away in a couple of months to buy something old and small, and that's what I drive even now. I have no idea what that was. My brother showed me pictures of bears standing up, mooses even, strange cryptid photos he found on Google, but none of that matched. A bear doesn't walk like that, and it isn't that thin. And a moose does not have that shape, let alone that face. Thank God I don't walk home anymore. True Stories of a Geriatric Nurse in Germany. From Stefan, Germany, 1903. First of all, I wanted to say that I love the way you tell all those stories. I stumbled over them during a night shift on YouTube, and they're a part of my night shifts ever since. I'm a male geriatric nurse working in a nursing home for elderly people in Germany, and at this time I'm 29 years old. I've never been a skeptic when it comes to the supernatural or unexplainable, and I wouldn't say that I get spooked easily. Maybe because I've already witnessed bad things from a very young age, since I started working in nursing homes when I was 14. I've experienced various, mystical or unexplainable things during my time at work, and I thought, why don't I just share them with you? Because in my job I work with very personal and intimate data, I won't share any names of my elderlies, but I'll try to keep as many details in these stories as I legally can. Number 1. The first time I witnessed something suspicious or nearly supernatural was when I was 18 and just started getting serious in my job by freshly entering a professional internship to become a geriatric nurse. My colleagues and I were sitting in the office room of the elderly home, doing our break. Right at the opposite side of the office was a room, empty at the time, because the man who was living in there had died only a few days ago. He had been a nice man, caring for some of the other people living with us, like helping them to cut their meals in comfortable bits, or filling up their glasses with water or tea or other beverages. I was eating my sandwich that I prepared for that day, when all of a sudden, exactly that room started to ring. When we say a room or a patient is ringing, we mean that they pressed the call button in their room to call for us. This causes a little red lamp over their door to light up, and a soft bell starts to ring to alarm us that the person needs something. That empty room ringed. I gave a look to my colleagues and we waited. Two of them started to smile and grin, obviously amused because of my sweet, unknowing reaction. Or probably just because I stopped chewing and watched the door of that room with suspicion all over my face. Until one of them leaned closer to me, encouraging me. "Come on, give it a look. I promise you, there's nobody in there. He is just saying goodbye." I looked at her in disbelief, but I stood up. I went over to that room and I opened the door. She was right. There was nobody inside. Just the call button over the empty bed lighting up. My colleague came after me, understanding and soft, saying, "Look, you gotta learn. Sometimes people don't leave even after they've died. Sometimes they stay for a bit until they really leave, whether their body's still here or not. Congratulations, you just learned the reason why we open the window and light a candle whenever someone of our elderly dies." And she's right. By now I've worked in 2 hospitals and 4 elderly homes/nursing homes. All of them honor that tradition. Whenever, wherever you witness that someone, a patient or an elderly person, died, you open a window, no matter the weather outside, and you light a candle. The candle is meant to light the soul, spirit, ghost, or whatever you want to call it, of the deceased to show them the way to their beyond. And you open the window so nothing gets trapped inside. Number 2. Over the years, I have learned that I don't need to fear the dead. I've had many other encounters like that. Sometimes I would hear just like a whisper, a patient that died, like them calling my name, or the sounds of their walking. I even heard one of their wheelchairs one time, even though the owner of that wheelchair had just died. No matter what, they never hurt me. It's humans I'm afraid of, the living ones, and I've got my reasons. A few years ago, when I was 23, I worked the night shift. To close in on some important information, at that time I worked in a very small nursing home, which had up to 43 elderly people, and I might be the sole worker there from 9 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. Yeah, just me for 43 people. It was like my usual night shifts, though. I did my first 2 rounds, made sure that everybody got everything they needed, and was safe and sleeping soundly. I arranged the medication for the next day. Then I would have a bit of free time. Of course, I couldn't go on a full break, but everything was quiet. And on one such night, I sat back into my office chair during free time and spent some time on my phone. Around 2:30 a.m., something happened. One of my elderly, a man with autism and a brain developing error, which kept him on a cognitive level of a 10 to 12-year-old boy, called. He was a sweetheart, and he never usually called in the night. It wasn't part of his routine. So naturally, I got up right away and made my way to his room on the ground level. I entered his room slowly, so I wouldn't scare him if he just pressed the call button while being asleep. But he looked at me. He was awake. Well, more or less. His eyes were small and tired and half asleep and half awake. So I went up next to his bed and asked him softly and calmly, "Hey, is everything all right?" He looked at me. I saw in his eyes and his face that he was bothered by having his routine ruined that night. But he stayed calm and sweet. But then he said something that made my blood freeze in my very veins. "Stefan, there are men in front of my window." I tensed up a bit, but I kept my professional face soft, warm, and understanding. He was afraid, basically an afraid child in the body of an old man. So I took his hand in mine and told him, "It's okay. I bet you just had a nightmare. You can go back to sleep now. I'm here. I'm not going to let anything happen to you." It worked. As soon as I finished talking, he closed his eyes and went back to sleep immediately. But there was this feeling. Why did he see that in his dream? I stood up. I turned toward the window to draw the curtains shut, and I froze. He was right. It wasn't a dream. When I turned, I faced 3 men wearing black hoodies. I could not see their faces, but they looked big and bad. I turned and sprinted. I knew his window was shut, so they couldn't get into the room. He was safe, but I was alone, guarding 43 elderly people all by myself, with 3 unknown men in front of the building, possibly looking for a way inside. I ran as fast as I could. I went into every room, checking every window. After I was certain that there was no way in, I started panicking. Not loud, but I was very afraid. Because these men didn't leave after I saw them. They stayed. I did the only thing I could think to do at the time. I grabbed my phone and called the neighbor of the nursing home. Luckily for me, he picked up and did what I asked. He opened his back door loudly, turning on the lights to his house, and slammed it shut again. It worked. The men took off down the street and out of view. I was so relieved. But why didn't I just call the police? Well, I'll tell you this. The next station was about half an hour away. Too far for them to arrive in time. These men would have managed to come inside and do God knows what by then. A few days went by, and when I returned for work, I learned something that gave me the chills all over again. The same night, about 1 hour later than my encounter, someone broke into the nursing home 2 towns over. They cut through the glass of the staircase and entered the building that way. They didn't hurt anyone, luckily, but they went in, stealing the medicine from the elderly, primarily numbing and pain-killing meds. Those are just 2 of many stories and encounters I've had over the years. If you've got any interest for other stories from me, I'd be happy to share them with you. Take care, everyone. The Cleaner's Shift in the Old Wing, from Ziggy Stardust. I'm 36, from Wales. I work nights as a cleaner in a big old hospital. You know the type, one of those massive Victorian buildings that's been extended over the years with newer bits bolted on. My job is to go through the quieter wards and corridors after visiting hours, mopping floors, emptying bins, and making sure everything's tidy for the day staff. Most nights it's just me and a couple of other cleaners, plus the skeleton night staff. After midnight, the place goes properly dead. The lights are dimmed, the heating clanks, and you can hear your own footsteps echoing down the long corridors. It was a bitter cold night in February. Rain lashed against the windows like it was trying to get in. Around 2:30 a.m., I was finishing up in the old East Wing, the part of the hospital they barely used anymore except for storage and the occasional overflow ward. The lights in that section are always a bit flickery, and it smells damp. Nothing you spray on it ever quite covers whatever's underneath. I needed a break, so I headed for the small staff room tucked away at the far end of the corridor. It's a grim little place with peeling paint and plastic chairs that have seen better days. When I pushed open the door, the lights were already on, which was strange. We're supposed to turn them off to save power. There was an odd smell, too. Not that usual hospital stink, but something sickly sweet. I flicked on the kettle and sat down. That's when I heard scratching, like fingernails dragging across something. I leaned down to look. Nothing. Just shadows and a few old sweet wrappers. The rain was hammering hard outside. Then my walkie-talkie crackled. But no voice, just low static with something underneath. Sort of a gurgling. The lights dimmed suddenly, buzzing like they were about to die. It was then that I saw him sitting in the far corner, half hidden by the coat rack. An older man in his late 50s. wearing the same dark green cleaner's uniform as me, but it looked worn and much more outdated. His skin was pale and waxy, and he was hunched over, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "Hey, you all right?" I said, trying to sound casual. "I didn't see you come in." He didn't move or even blink. The rotting flower smell was getting stronger, filling the room. I stood up slowly. "You new on nights? I haven't seen you around before." Still nothing, until eventually, with a raspy voice, he whispered, "You finish your round yet?" No. I've still got the west corridor to do. You okay there? You don't sound too good." He slowly raised his head. His eyes, I swear to you, were solid black. Like 2 holes had been drilled into his skull. They didn't even reflect the lights. "Best you clock out now, before it realizes you're still walking these halls." My stomach tried to crawl up my own throat. "What do you mean, it?" A slow, broken smile spread across his face, revealing 2 long teeth that were more than yellow. "The one that does the final sweep after the living are supposed to be gone. Don't stay too long." Suddenly, the walkie-talkie exploded with noise. At the same time, the temperature in the room plummeted. I could see my own breath. I backed to the door, never taking my eyes off of him. As I reached for the handle, the last thing he said to me was, "It's already counted you once tonight." I slammed the door shut and ran down the corridor. The main lights in the east wing suddenly flared back to full brightness. The other cleaners said I looked as if I'd seen a ghost when I found them. I told them in basically a whimper what I saw. One older lad went pale and said there used to be a cleaner here in the 90s who died in the exact same staff room. He'd apparently been found slumped in the chair with his eyes wide open. They say it was a heart attack, but rumors always swirled that he'd seen something he shouldn't have while working the old wing by himself. I forced myself to finish the shift, but I have not stepped foot in that back staff room since. There's only one good way to walk home alone at night, and that's by becoming a premium member at Eerie.fm right now. You can keep yourself company with my members-only podcast, Fractured Reality, where I narrate allegedly true accounts of glitches in reality, or explore new worlds like the one in Dogwood, a horror novel audiobook I narrated myself about monsters attacking a small town in Georgia in the 1940s. Free users can get samples, but premium users get the full experience. That's Eerie.fm. Membership does not guarantee protection from hungry monsters or terrifying coworkers. Good night. That's all for now, everyone. I've got to clock out, but I'll be back again real soon. By the way, if you do have any ideas of some members-only or spin-off podcasts based off of Tales from the Break Room, I'm all ears. Tweet me on Twitter @DarkPrevails, or send me an email at brendan@eeriecast.com. I'd love to hear your ideas. Thank you.